but you just can't make them go on the Mesa Verde. God made that country for buffalo. Serves pretty well for cattle, but it hates the plow. And even the government should know that you can't farm 6,000 feet above sea level.
Any trouble, Mr.
Frequently, people will try to compare the production from different systems. And so they will say, well, look, we can produce more calories from this hectare of crops than we can from grazing cattle on rangelands. So frequently, they're not comparing the yield of beef from the similar land class, right? But in any case, and so they'll look at caloric yield, they'll look at protein yield. My point would be, we're not talking about calories or protein with enough sophistication to say that 100 kilocalories from plants doesn't have the same metabolic effect on human beings as 100 kilocalories from animal source foods, right? I mean, it's sugar and starch versus fat. And so
you also get into the argument that, you can't actually consume calories. It's a unit of energy.
Sure.
We develop on nutrients.
Sure.
And
on the other hand, these are metrics that are used in the conversation. Yeah. So there's layers of these, and you're absolutely right. Calories don't weigh anything. We could get to the protein question, in which they want to compare, so many kilograms of protein, I'm putting air quotes around it for listeners, from plant source foods to an equivalent amount of protein from animal source foods. They're not equivalent. And this is a point that I've made in a couple, and it's not like this is new to me, yet it seems to not be well enough recognized within the food systems conversations, let alone the dietary guidelines conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Everyone seems to think that, it doesn't matter as long as it's protein. They don't understand that the proteins and fats, for example, are full of nutrients. There's a reason that we consume these particular proteins, because they are far higher in nutrient density than plant proteins. Can you tell us a little some of the differences between the plant proteins and why they're not so consumable for humans?
Well, let's just start with that protein in quotes, because anytime you look in a table or on a label for a food and it lists a value so many grams for protein, that protein is actually crude protein. Yeah. It's a term that we know from animal nutrition, and it's an estimate that's based on the percent nitrogen that's in that feed or food. So we do that analysis, we come up with a nitrogen percentage, we multiply that by 6.25, and that gives us the crude protein value. It's based on the assumption that all of the nitrogen in that sample was in protein, and all of that protein was 16% nitrogen. So that's how we get that estimate. We've done it since the late 1800s. It works okay with ruminant nutrition, sort of, because ruminant animals can utilize non-protein nitrogen. So, for example, if I have green leafy vegetables, it's likely to have a significant amount of nitrate in it. That nitrogen that's in the nitrate is going to be part of the estimate of the crude protein content when they do that analysis and publish those data. Okay, well, but that's not protein. And so people are kind of misled by the conversations. And then we don't digest protein, we absorb amino acids.
Exactly.
And maybe some, short peptides, but basically these large molecules are denatured and broken down in our digestive system, and we absorb the components, the amino acids. Animal source foods have all of the essential amino acids we require, and they have them in the proper ratios to each other. And so our ability to then utilize those amino acids that we absorb from the foods that we eat is limited by the essential amino acids that are present in the lowest amount relative to their requirement. So in other words, we don't have a uniform requirement for all these amino acids. We need more of some than others. But if one of those isn't present enough, then we can't utilize the rest of them. And so we'll use those for energy. We'll excrete the excess nitrogen. These are issues that are a big concern in poultry and swine. They've known about it for several decades. Not so much in human nutrition, which is really remarkable when, we start to have these conversations. Of course, animal source foods are more than merely amino acids, right? They're the package of essential nutrition that human beings require for proper development and function, and I would say for flourishing. So we've gone through this period over the last half century where we were taught to fear naturally occurring fat from animal source foods, particularly the saturated fat. We were even taught to fear the dietary cholesterol, which never had any justification.